All right, everyone. Good morning and welcome back. This is Stephanie Willis again. And for those of you who weren't here on the first webinar, I work here in the Office of Training and Exercise at the Virginia Department of Emergency Management. We are pleased to welcome all of you to this morning's Recovery and Mitigation two-part webinar series. We're starting out with part 2, an overview of the Virginia Mitigation website. Before we get started, you will notice we are presenting in a different format than we have in the past. We have changed over to the Share My Desktop view. The desktop you are viewing is the presenters. In order to see both the list of participants and the chat box on your screen, you will need to click on the drop-down menu, which is located in the middle of your screen at the top. Simply click on the participants and chat buttons and place anywhere on your screen that you would like. Due to the number of callers, we will be muting all participant lines during this session. So if you have any questions during the presentation, please do ask them. We just ask that you do so via the chat feature. Simply type them in, and they will be answered in the same format. If you would rather ask your questions verbally, we ask that you hold these until Chris takes a break for questions or until the end, and there will be a question and answer session. At the end, there will be an opportunity to provide feedback to include suggestions, topics, and feedback. We very much appreciate any answers you give. Also, this session will be recorded and a link will be sent to all registered participants to view the recorded session. Now, to reintroduce our presenter today, Chris Stason. He is the VP of the Client Services for MB3 and has more than 8 years of experience conducting training sessions on the EM Grants Pro software, better known as VirginiaPA.org and MitigationVA.org. MB3 software has been managing the PA and HM grants since 2005 and is currently being used in over 13 states. Chris, take it away.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. Thank you for joining the call, everyone. I appreciate your time. I apologize for running late. Just had a system freezing up on me as I wanted to log in, but we are good to go. If you've attended the previous session this morning on public assistance and you're in this session as well, unfortunately, a lot of what I'll be showing you is very similar to PA with just the pre-application application portion that is different for mitigation. So I apologize if I seem repetitive. It's just because the systems are designed in a very similar way for both PA and HM. First, I would just want to point out to you that the state has made available to you some training guides that you can access. When you go to mitigationva.org, at the top right-hand corner, there's a link called Training. When you click on that link, you will see some additional PDF documents with screenshots, etc., and instructions as to how to submit a pre-application application, reimbursements, some information on or guidance on documents and call reports, etc. So a really good reference to go to if you need some more information. I will show to you how you can access the systems user guide that will give you some more information as to how to perform certain functions in the system as well. But this is additional resources that you can use that might assist. Okay, the screen that you're seeing right now is what you'll see when you log into the mitigationva.org system. When you log in, you'll see your homepage. You'll see some information on your homepage, but at the very top, you'll see what we refer to as the main navigation bar. And you'll notice that I'll be using that to navigate through in the system today, and I'll explain some information there as well. On the right-hand side, you have a little welcome message, your name. You've got a little star, which I'll get back to, and then a login button, and then a yellow question mark icon. When you click on that yellow question mark icon, this is where you can access the help guide that I referenced. The help guide will, like I said, give you step-by-step instructions to perform certain actions. So, for example, if you want to know, how do I create a new or submit a new time extension request? You can go to the help guide. There are step-by-step instructions for how you can submit the time extension, for example. All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yep, you're back. Thanks, Chris.
All right, sorry about that. Okay, so like I mentioned, you can also open a support ticket. So if you need assistance on something specific that you can't find either in the user guide or in the training guides that were provided, or maybe you're experiencing some issue, or maybe you have a suggestion for a feature that would be helpful, or a report that would be helpful, or a notification, or whatever it might be, you can submit any of those requests through a support ticket by opening a support ticket. Okay, you'll also see a list of open accounts that you have access to. An account is just basically saying your subgrantee or your applicant, the applicant that you represent, has an account or a project under a specific grant or disaster. So, for example, this person called Henry Ford is a contact for Fairfax County Library, and they have an account under this severe snowstorm called 4433. So that's why it's listed there. If you have multiple accounts, you'll have them all listed there. On the right-hand side, you have your inbox summary, which is correlates to your inbox at the top here on the menu. As you can see, that icon is a yellow with the 1 in. It basically means that there's one item in there that is that has come into my inbox that is now waiting for me to take action on it. So if I were to click on that menu, you'll see that it shows that some item was returned to me by a specific user for my attention, so I can just click on that and it will take me directly to that item. In addition to getting an inbox entry, you will also get an email notification in your regular email inbox. So examples of that would be, let's say for instance you've submitted a request to VDEM, and for some reason they've returned it to you for correction. Maybe they need you to change something or add a document or whatever the case might be. If they return it to you, you'll get an inbox entry and you'll get an email notification. There are also other notifications in the system, things like, you know, if you've submitted a pre-application and that pre-application is approved, then you'll get a notification of that and it will request you to complete a full application. If a reimbursement request has been approved, you'll get a notification of that, which indicates that they're going to process a payment at some point. If you have core reports that are due, you'll be notified, etc. So the system has several notifications built in. But like I mentioned, you know, if you feel that a certain notification is not there and it would be helpful, you can request that with the support ticket, and it's something that we can work on for sure. On your right-hand side, you have your core reports section. It just lists all the core reports that are due, and the system auto-generates these core reports. We'll have a look at one later on in the call, but the system automatically generates these quarter reports about 30 days before they're due. 30 days before the end of the quarter, and you'll have until about 30 days after the quarter end date to complete and submit these quarter reports. But we'll look at that in just a second. Then a little lower down, it shows you applicants that you represent. If you represent more than one applicant, you'll have multiple listed there. And this is also from where you would initiate submitting a new pre-application under a specific disaster. Like I mentioned at the top here, we have the main navigation bar. So from here, you can generate listings by clicking on any of these links that you see listed here. For example, you can go and generate a project listing. You can generate a listing of all your applications or worksheets, time extensions, etc. You can also go and generate a listing on any payables or payments or reimbursement requests that you might have, etc. So all these listings or financial reports you can generate through the main menu section. If you were to, for example, generate a project listing, this is one way, for example, to get to a project that you might already have in the system. I'll show you in a minute how you can actually submit a new pre-application for a new project to be created. But if you do have existing projects, you can just... Hi, sorry about that. I've switched to a different line, so I'm hoping that issue will now be gone. I'm not sure why it keeps cutting me off. Okay, so we're looking at a project listing, and when you generate any listing on the system, whether you're doing a report on projects or core reports or payments, whatever it is, you do have the option to apply filters to that listing. Right now, there's not a lot of data, but if you're a bigger applicant or subgrantee, you might have 20, 30 projects that you're working on. You might be representing multiple applicants or subgrantees. So you might have the need to filter some of the data that you're seeing to generate a report that is relevant for what you need it for. So in that case, you'll click on the filter button, and you'll apply certain filters. You can select a specific disaster. You can maybe select a specific type of project. Maybe you want to just see your elevation projects, or maybe you want to see just your individual safe room projects, or whatever it is that you want to see. You can apply all these filters to your listing, and then once you've applied those filters to your listing, you can then either kick the listing out to Excel, and then do some reporting in there, pivot tables, or whatever it is that you need to do, or you can actually print a listing or save it as a PDF. When you export to Excel, it will give you the option to export the standard set of columns that are selected by default, or you have a custom column option. In this case, you can say, you know what, I want to include additional information. For example, I want to see whether a project is open or closed, or when the obligation date was. All that information, how much has been paid federally, and how much has been, whatever the options are, you can select those data elements when you export to Excel. And every listing in the system gives you the option of including some additional data elements that are available to you. So you can really build a report that provides you with the information and the data that you need to do the reporting on. Now, I'm just going to jump to this project quickly. I just want to show you what a typical screen looks like in the system. And regardless of the item that you're looking on, the layout is very much the same. So what you'll see is at the very top is this colored header. It might be blue, it might be green, it might be like a reddish color. It just depends on what you're looking at in the system. It's just a visual aid to let you know where you are in the system. The more you use the system, the more you'll get used to it. And then at the very top of that colored header section, you have a bit of a breadcrumb, what we refer to as a breadcrumb. It's just kind of a path as to how you got to where you are at the moment. The title will tell you what you're looking at. So right now we're looking at a project, and the title of the project is My Elevation Project. And specifically, it is for the subgrantee of Fairfax County Library, and it's under the disaster 4433. So it gives you an indication of where you are in the system, the header. Then you have this gray action bar. We call it an action bar because all the buttons are on there that you can actually take action on. Depending on where you are in the system, different buttons will show, and depending on permissions and things like that. But that's where all the action takes place on that gray action bar. On the left-hand side, you have tabs, and these tabs will show you information specific to the item that you're on. So right now we're on a project. And so if I look at the expenses tab, it will give me a list of expenses for that specific project. So you can see there are 3 different expenses here for this specific project. If I go to payments, it will give me a list of payments specific to this project, or reimbursement requests, etc. Progress monitoring will be quarterly reports, time extensions, scope changes, and things like that specific to this project. Every item that you go to also has a summary tab at the very top, and the summary tab just gives you, well, exactly that, just a summary of the item, an overview of the item, some high-level information about that item, and it saves you from having to go into the tabs and try and find information that might be important or that you just want to quickly see. So it will give you some information at the top level. When you scroll down to the bottom, you will see what we refer to as the footer section, and that's the same on every item. And it allows you to add notes and comments, and it also allows you to add documents. This you can do on any item in the system, whether you're on a project, whether you're on an expense or a time extension, request or a pre-application, whatever the item is, you can add a note and you can add documents. There's no limit as to the number of documents that you can upload. You can upload 100 documents if you want to. There's no limit as to the size of the document that you can upload. However, the upload process does time out after 30 minutes. So you can upload as big a document as you want, provided that the upload is completed within 30 minutes. That's the only constraint that you have with uploading documents. And you can upload any type of document, spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs, images, photos, whatever it is that you need to upload. The notes section is also a really nice feature to communicate to other users. You can either just add a generic note to an item that will be visible to anyone coming to that item, but you can also use it to send a note to a specific user or users. And you do that by just saying add note. And if you were in the recipient section, let's say for instance I type in John. I want to send a note specifically to John Scar, who is my colleague. I'll add his name there. Maybe I also want to add Rod, so I'll type in Rod and I'll select his name. And now I can add a new note subject. And when I add this note, it will add it to the footer section of this project, as you can see. Anyone coming here will now be able to view this note, but both John and Rod will actually receive an inbox entry, like this entry here at the top. So they'll get an inbox entry here that says a new note was added by Henry Ford, and when they click on it, it will bring them directly to this note. In addition to getting an inbox entry, they will also get an email notification in their regular email inbox to let them know that someone added a note for their attention. If either John or Rod or actually anyone else were to reply to this comment, then everyone involved in that conversation thread will be notified of a response as well. You'll get an inbox entry and an email notification. So it's a really nice way to communicate with VDEM, with your colleagues, with other users. Everything is logged and date and time stamped, so everything can be tracked. It's a really nice way of keeping track of things and communicating back and forth. In terms of uploading a document, you can just click the Add Document, say choose a file. What this will do is actually allow you to upload multiple documents in one go. So if I were to just go down here and select some documents here, you'll see that it will automatically start importing all 5 of those documents, and there's no limit as to how many you can select. You can select 10, 20 if you want. It will allow you to change the file name, so whatever you want the file name to be. In the drop-down, you have to select the type of document that you're uploading. The options in this drop-down is something that VDEM manages, so and it's specific to the item that you're on or the module that you're on. So if you find in this drop-down there's not an option that you need to select, or for whatever reason having a specific option would really help when uploading documents, you can actually submit a support ticket to VDEM and say, can you on the project screen, for example, add a new document type called contract. They can very easily go and just add contract as a document type if they choose to do so, and then you'll have that option available for selection. So you just select the document types. Once you've done that, you hit the upload button, and those documents will upload. Once the documents have been uploaded, they will show right here in the first section up to 5. The 5 most recent documents will show here. In the first section, if you have more than 5 documents, you can just go to the Documents tab, and the Documents tab will give you a full listing of all the documents attached to this specific item. What you can also do is which is a really nice feature, is you can log expenses against the project as, throughout the life of the project without having to submit them as a reimbursement request to VDEM. So, as expenses incur, you have to keep track of those. You have to keep the supporting documentation because you do have to submit them at some point when you request for reimbursement, etc. So this system is made available to you, has been made available to you to do exactly that, to track all your documentation. Like I just showed you, you can attach any documentation to a project or a request. You can log your expenses and upload the invoice or the contract or any supporting documentation for that expense on that project directly to the project in the system. Any data or documents entered into the system is kept indefinitely, so you'll most definitely stick to the minimum document retention period. It will be there indefinitely for you to look at in the future going forward and so forth. So I'm just going to show you what it looks like to create an expense, log an expense against the project. So, the first thing is you go to the project, go to the expenses tab where we are now, and then you just click on create expense. This will take you to a draft expense form. Now you can go in and you can enter all the expense related information. And once you've done that, you can also upload, scan and upload the supporting documentation. So let's say, for instance, this is account contract summary. You can type in the vendor name that shows up on that invoice. The system keeps track of vendors. So if you actually type in a vendor name, it will provide you with a suggestion here at the bottom. If no suggestion comes up, you can just type in a vendor name. It will tell you that there's no suggestion. It's fine. You can just ignore that. The system will then automatically add that vendor to the list, and then next time it will be available to you for selection. You can also enter the invoice number. The system will actually give you an alert if it finds that you're entering a duplicate invoice number under the same vendor, the same vendor invoice combination. To help you, not create duplicate things. You can put in the invoice date, the amount of the invoice, and how much it is that you will be requesting for reimbursement. So let's say, we'll do the full 5,000. Okay, so now that you have entered in all the information, you can hit the create button and create that expense. Like I said, you can now scan supporting documentation. You can, at the expense level, scroll down to the footer section, like I just showed you on the project, and you can actually add the document, the supporting documentation directly to this expense, and then it will be kept in the system. It will be retained in the system, and then maybe 6 months or a year down the line, whenever you're ready to submit these expenses as reimbursement requests to the state, you can just quickly select those expenses and combine them into a reimbursement request. It takes about 2 clicks to do so, and then submit it to the state for reimbursement. Something that's unique to mitigation is that on the expense, even though a project might have a default federal share of, let's say, 75% federal share on a project, you do have the option to allocate the amount of share that you want to use on a specific expense. So this is a $5,000 expense, but you might want to not use the 75% federal share portion of it. Maybe these were the $5,000 share was donated resources or something, so you want to allocate that to your local share. So you can actually go and say, I don't want to use any federal share, I don't want to use any state share, area state share, but I'm going to use the full 5,000 to come off of my it's percent, so 100%. You want to use the full expense to come off of your local share. So you can do that at the expense level. The next expense you might want to say, well, I actually want 100% of it to come off of my federal share. And the system will keep track of that. At the end of the day, you'll only, they'll only pay 75% federal share, whatever state share there is, they'll pay, and the rest will be local share. But it's a way for you to, at the expense level, indicate what it is that you would like to allocate this specific expense to. So I'm just going to save this, and I'm going to just use a quick way to create a new expense. Right from here, you can actually use the copy feature if it's very similar information. When you use the copy feature, it will just copy all that data over as default values in the form, and you can just update whatever it is that you need to update. So in this case, maybe I'll say this is the same vendor, but it's a different invoice number, and this is for a different amount. It's for $6,000, and I'm going to request $6,000. But in this case, I'm going to use the normal 75, 10, 15%, whatever breakdown, and I'm just going to click create, and I can upload documentation to this expense as well. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly jump back to the project. You can either use the back to project button, or the breadcrumb is also a way to navigate. You can click on that and navigate to the project. If you hover over it for a little bit, it will give you a drop down of menu options, the tabs on the left. So let's say, okay, I want to go directly to the expenses tab for this project. I can hover over the breadcrumb for the project and then click on the expenses link, and that will now navigate directly to the expenses tab on the project, as you can see. So if I were to do the same for the account, I can hover over it and I can go directly to the payments listing for that account, for example, by just clicking on that. Okay, so we can see the two expenses that I just added here at the bottom, one for $5,000, one for $6,000. You can see the federal, state, and local share breakdown that I've allocated on those two expenses. You'll notice it's different from the first two expenses in that there's no reimbursement request number or workflow step assigned to it. This is an indication that these expenses are unlinked expenses. And what we mean by unlinked is that they're not tied to a reimbursement request, which will result in a payment. They're just expenses that have been logged against this project. You've uploaded their documentation, etc., but you're not actually requesting a reimbursement at this time. You're just tracking your expenses throughout the life of the project. So let's say now you're 6 months down the line, you're ready, you've logged all your expenses, you're ready to submit a reimbursement request at this time to get some payment from VDM. So at this point, you have the option to just create a reimbursement request, pull in those two expenses, and the system will pull in all the data as well as all the supporting documentation into that reimbursement request with a single click, and then you're ready to submit that request to VDM. So the process of creating any request that you want to submit to VDM is the same regardless of what type of request it is. It can be time extension, it can be a scope change, it can be a project closeout, it can be a reimbursement request. Whatever it is, the process is the same. First step is you log into mitigationva.org. Second step is you navigate to the project, and you can do that through the projects menu. You can go through the account and trickle down to the project. You really have several options that you have to actually navigate to the project. So that's the second step. Once you're on the project, very easily you just click on the Create New Request button, and you select the request that you would like to submit. So in this case, it can be a reimbursement request, it can be project closeout, time extension, like I mentioned. So for now, we want to create a reimbursement request. We're ready to select those expenses and push it to VDM for processing. So I'm just going to click on New Reimbursement Request. And now you see two options here. You see a Create New Expense option, and you see a Link an Existing Expense option. We can create a new expense from scratch. So if you opted not to log the expense at the project level, over time, maybe you have an invoice in front of you right now that you immediately want to submit as a reimbursement request, you can do that. You just click New Reimbursement Request, and create new expense, and then type in the information, upload the invoice, etc. So you can do it that way. Or you can say, you know what, I already logged expenses. I want to include them in this reimbursement request. So let's go with that option. I'll click on link an existing expense. And there you can see the two expenses that we created, the unlinked expenses. So at this point, you can select one of them. You can select both of them if you want to. And there can be 20 listed here, and you can select all 20 if you want as well. So at this point, I'm just going to hit link. And with that single click, what the system now does is it's pulling in all those expenses, all the data with all the attached documentation, all of that into this reimbursement request. And there we can see the two expenses. You can click on the summary tab if you want to, just to do an overview here. You can see there are two expenses. You can see, you know, the total that you're requesting is $11,000. It gives you the breakdown of the federal, state, and local. And what's been deemed as eligible later or ineligible, that's you know, that is later on during the review process from BDEM. But once you're ready to submit this reimbursement request, you just hit the submit button and confirm. You can leave a note here if you want to. You don't have to. You can just hit the yes button to confirm. And now that reimbursement request goes to the state for processing. As you can see right now, it's in step 2, which is the approval step. BDEM will be notified of this reimbursement request when you submit it. Somewhere on their side, we'll open it up, we'll look at the documentation, etc. We'll do whatever their internal process is. And when this reimbursement request gets approved, it will result, in a payment trigger. That payment trigger will then be picked up by the finance side, and a payment will be processed, and you receive your payment based on what was deemed to be eligible. So that's the reimbursement request process. It's very similar to any other process on a project. You know, let's say, for instance, you want to do a time extension on this project. So first step is log into mitigationva.org. Second step is go to the project screen, which we're on right now. Third step is click on create new request and select the request. So let's say we want to do a time extension. So I'll just click on time extension. That will navigate to a draft time extension form. I can say, you know what, I'm requesting my period of performance end date to be June 30th. You know, here's my justification, etc. You can say % complete, milestones, etc. You can upload supporting documentation. You can add notes if you want to, like with any other request. And then once you're ready to submit this, you just hit the submit button, and that now goes to BDEM for processing. So as you can see, the process is exactly the same regardless of the request that it is that you would like to submit. Okay, so one thing that I'm going to show you now is, excuse me, let's say there's a new declaration, a new disaster. You want to submit a pre-application under that disaster. You log into the system. On your home page, under applicant you represent, or applicants that you represent, there's a link called Apply for a Grant. So you'll click on that. At this point, you'll say, or the system will ask you to select which grant it is that you would like to apply for. So let's say we want to apply for this new one called 4433 Severe Snowstorm. We'll select that. At that point, it will ask you to select the project type. So here you can say, okay, I want to do an acquisition demolition. I want to do an elevation. You know, whatever project type it is that you're looking to do. So let's say we're doing an acquisition demolition, and you hit the create button. Okay, so at this point, you put in the project title. So we'll just call this a new acquisition project, acquisition demolition project. You fill in the, you know, all the different information here, identify the problem, project description. You give an estimated budget. Let's say this is going to be 100 or $10,000 project. We're expecting the federal share to be 75%. Sorry, 75. 100, 75%, etc. You could fill in all of the other information, and then you just hit the submit button. So very similar to, a time extension or a reimbursement request. It's just initiated differently because the project doesn't exist yet. You can't go to the project first to submit it. You have to actually do it from your home screen. So now this pre-application has been submitted. VDM will review it. When they approve this application, it will result in an application, a full application, and you'll get notified of the fact that the application has been approved. It will give you a link directly to the application that you now need to go and complete and submit to VDM. So I'm not able to do that because I'm logged in as the applicant, but I'm just going to see if I can go to an application form through the applications listing. And here is here's one that we can work on. Okay, so here we have an application that was created as a result of the pre-application being approved. So you'll be notified, and now you have to go and actually complete the full application. I'm not going to go into it in detail because it is a lengthy process, or not just for this call. It's a bit of a lengthy process. But you'll go in and you'll add who the primary, alternate, and authorized contacts are. If they're not listed in the listing, you can say, create new contact or list someone else. You fill in all the information. I'm not going to go through that. I'm just going to select this one user that I have available. You enter in your planning requirements, plan narrative, mitigation plan reference, etc. Second tab is the history of hazards tab, where you will log some of the past damages, what kind of loss and description you had, population affected, kind of people in those type of areas, the hazard to mitigate, the level of protection, useful life of the project, etc. Then you can go into the scope of work, which talks about just the description of the project, what the description of the problem, and the description of the proposed project. Then you can actually add worksheets as well. So from here, you just hit on the Create Worksheet button. That will then allow you to go into worksheets. We'll do that in a second. I'm just going to go to the Cost tab here quickly. You can indicate whether this is a phased, like a two-phase project or a single-phase project. At this point, let's keep it as a single phase, and you can add cost lines here. So you can say under match type, this is material. Give it a description, what type of material it is, the quantity, the unit, the price per unit, whether it's pre-award or post-award. So it's just a yes/no drop-down, and it will continue to add. So you can continue to add multiple cost lines here. Then you will just enter the federal share. You're expecting maybe a 75% federal share. Obviously, VDM might make changes here, but you can indicate what you think this will be. Okay, then you have timeline. And this is where you put in your project milestones. So you can just go and add a milestone to the table by clicking on the Add Line button. Give a description of the milestone or the task that's being completed, how many days, let's say 90 days for this, and you can add as many lines as you want. Then you have alternatives. This is the no action alternative, as well as the other feasible alternative information that you can put in here. A bit of a budget for the alternative option. You can provide all that information. and then you just go into the elevation. Depending on what type of project, of course, this is an acquisition demolition, but you can get into elevation criteria, an agreement, etc. So some of these form fields are different depending on the type of project that you're on, but it looks very similar. Okay, I'm just going to save this form. Okay, so it looks like we got some sort of error. Okay, so I'm not 100% sure what the using to do a demonstration in, so I'm not sure if they're working on something in the site, so I do apologize about the error. That should not be the case. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the application worksheets. I'm going to show you the process of adding a new worksheet. So we're on the application worksheet tab. I'm going to click on the create worksheets. And this will just navigate away to a draft worksheet form, basically. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to put in a title. One. Let's see, there's some sort of issue here as well. Okay. So just so you know that I'm just looking at some of the questions here. First of all, Mitigation VA and the Virginia VA systems are two separate systems currently, so you will need separate profiles and logins, one for each system. You know, potentially in the future, we could there is an option to merge the two systems into one, at which point you'll only need a single login and single profile. But for now, it's two different systems needing two different user profiles. Then someone also mentioned character limits on the fields. Our larger fields do offer a character limit. I'm just going to see if I can find an example, but not all fields, and I'll explain the difference to you. Let's go back here. Okay, unfortunately, I don't have an example on the worksheet of one that shows a count, but typically smaller text fields like the one I'm typing in right now, it doesn't show you a character limit. It's basically just it will stop typing when you get there, but typically the allowance is for more than what you will typically enter into that specific field. But larger text fields will show you the limit, and it will show you how many characters you're using off of the limit as you're typing dynamically. So I'll just illustrate that in a minute, but not all fields have that. So if you don't see it, like these short fields, they're typically 200 characters or something like that. It's meant for just short answers, and you'll reach the end of the field before you reach the limit of the characters that you enter. But once again, if you find that you came across a field where you feel that you don't have enough character space, that's a great example of submitting a support ticket and requesting for a change to be made. It's a fairly easy change that we can make, but just submit a support ticket saying, listen, we need more space in this field. Can you please enlarge the character limit to that? Okay, so we're on a worksheet. You'll add some worksheet-specific information here, the location, the address, lat long information. You'll also go into the building owners. You'll go into some building specific information. So I just want to see if this is an example. Yeah, so this is an example of the character count. So you can see I've used 4 characters of a 3,000 character limit. So larger text fields like this will provide you with that. And text fields also grow as you type dynamically. So as you can see, this text field is growing bigger and bigger as I type. You also have the option of dragging the corner and making it bigger if you want to, or resizing it, whichever way it is that you want to go with it. So now you can also go down the cost level, and you can add a worksheet-specific cost. So at this point, I'll go ahead and I'll add some costs specific to this worksheet. I'll call this labor, and description, quantity, and amount. And I will hit the save button here. So at this point, you can also upload supporting documentation. Again, you can add notes. You can do all the typical things that you can do to any item in the system. You can also do to a worksheet. And you can also use a copy function. If you have multiple properties or locations that have very much the same information, maybe it's just the address that's different, you can use the copy function. It will copy all the data over, and you just change whatever data is different on that specific location, maybe the title or the address or something like that. But you can keep copying. And you can have, of course, as many worksheets, location worksheets on a single application as you need to have. So whether it's 50 or 100 or 200, it doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just going to jump back to the application. And when I go to the cost tab, you'll now see that it shows me a worksheet cost type summary. So I only picked one, I picked labor, but let's say you had 5 different worksheets, some had labor on it, some had material on it, some had, maybe all of them had rental costs or whatever on it. The summary table will actually sum all the costs across all worksheets per cost type. So for labor, it will show you a total. For material, it will show you a total, etc. So it gives you a nice breakdown of the cost at the worksheet level. Then the cost table will have a line that shows the total per worksheet. So in this case, we're at 10,000. For worksheets, then you can go ahead and add cost lines at the application level, and it will add it up to be the grand total of the project. Unfortunately, there's some issue that's not allowing me to save it, so I can't show you adding more cost lines, but that's basically how you would fill in an application form, add application worksheets, etc., build your application, and once you're ready to submit it, once again, you just go and hit the submit button, and that will go to the state for review. They'll send it to FEMA to review, etc. And once FEMA obligates that project, it will come through to this system as being obligated as well, at which point you can start doing project management on that project, submit reimbursement requests and things like that. So that is the entire application process. I'm quickly going to jump back to my home screen because I would just like to show you a quarter report. Let's go to this one that is due. As you can see, some of them say overdue, and then this one says May 30th. It means that this specific quarter report is due May 30th. So it will give you the date that it's due by. So I'm just going to click on that quarter report. And once you're on the core report, once again, it has a summary tab. We'll give you a summary. This specific core report only has one project on it. You might have multiple projects on a single quarter report. And to view all those projects, you can go to the projects tab. It will give you a listing of all the projects. In this case, of course, there's only one. And then when you go to the Form tab, it's where you actually complete that core report. And if you had multiple projects on a core report, it will give you a navigation option here at the top as well to navigate between all of the different projects. The notes section here will give you some assistance as to what your next action might be on a project, depending on what you're reporting. So, for example, if your estimated completion date is greater than the current work deadline date, performance period deadline date that you have on that project, then a time extension may be required. So there's a link right there to quickly create the time extension right from the quarterly report. If either the scope of work has deviated, maybe you want to substitute a worksheet location, maybe you want to change some budget line items, or maybe there's a cost overrun or something, for some reason there's a change to the project, at that point you need to submit a scope change request. And so you can actually create a new scope change directly from here. Then if you flagged this project as being 100% complete, you're done with the project, it's 100% complete, at that point a project closeout might be required so that you can close out the project. And there's a link directly from here to do that as well. So the core report form is very basic. It's just percent complete, the funds that you have expended to date on that project. It's not referring to what you have submitted to the state for reimbursement. It's just what have you expended to date on this project. And then if you have less than 100% complete, it will also ask for your anticipated final amount. So what do you expect this project to be, the total cost to be at the end of the life of the project, and when do you expect to complete the work on this project. If I were to change this to 100%, you'll see the labels changing to actual final amount and actual completion date. Because it's 100% complete, you know what the final cost was and when you finished the project. So then also the projected funds to be requested for reimbursement in the next quarter. So, you know, if you're still working on a project, maybe you're 50% done with the project, you're doing work on it, and you're expecting to have some expenses that you can submit for reimbursement within the next quarter, you can enter that here. You can say we're expecting, you know, $50,000 worth of reimbursements on this project to come in to be submitted within the next quarter. You can submit that. It just kind of gives the state a heads up of what's heading their way. If you don't have anything, you can just leave it blank. It's not a required field or anything, but it's just an option to fill that in. Work status at this point, you can say whether the work is complete, on schedule, it's started, it's not yet started, etc. Cost status, whether it's over budget, under budget, on schedule, you know, to be on budget, etc. What amount, if you selected, for example, over budget, it will ask you what amount that you're over, some additional cost, project costs and comments that you can add, whether you had a site visit this quarter. You know, if you had a site visit, you just say yes. It will ask you when the site visit date was and who it was that you submitted, who the visit was conducted by, the description of work that you completed during this quarterly report, as well as the anticipated work for the next quarter. So a lot of information that you can fill in. But once again, once you're done with working on a project, you can just hit the Save Changes button. It says the changes that you've made, and now you can go on to the next project if you have multiple projects on this core report, and do the same for that project, etc. But once you're done and you're ready to submit, you just hit the Submit button, and that core report then goes to BDM for reporting purposes. So that's how easy it is to complete and submit a core report. Just so you know that for as long as the project is deemed open by FEMA, that project will show up on a quarterly report. You have to report on it. So, and the rule is that if a project was open for at least 1 day within a quarter, it will show up on the next quarterly report. It will only drop off the quarterly report or the next quarterly report once it's closed. So that's how that works. Like I mentioned, the system auto-generates these quarterly reports. You don't have to worry about creating one or anything like that. It will auto-create it for you and will notify you that the quarterly report is due. Okay, so I've gone through a lot of information and I've gone through it really fast. What I'm going to do now is open up for Q&A. So I'm going to hand over to Stephanie and she'll facilitate that.
All right, everybody. If you have questions, you can go ahead and type them, or you can use the raise your hand feature like before. Oh, we have a question. Do you have to have an expense recorded in order to request reimbursement?
No, you don't. You can actually go directly to a reimbursement request to submit it. So, for example, if I were to go to a project, I'm just going to go to a project listing here. I'm going to pick any of the projects. Okay, so I have one project, so I'm going to click on that. Once you're on the project, like I mentioned, any request that you want to submit is, step 1 is log into the system. Step 2 is go to the project, like I just did. Step 3 is click on the create new request. So from here, I can click create new request, and I can say I want to submit a new reimbursement request. I'll go to the reimbursement request. At this point, I can just say create a new expense. And so you have to create an expense in order to request a reimbursement. So you need at least one expense. And I apologize for what the form looks like. It's not supposed to look like that. It's a bit of a bug, but like I said, I'm just working in a development side. So once you've created the expense, completed the information for that expense, and you've created the expense, that reimbursement request is now ready for submission. So you don't have to create and log the expenses ahead of time on the project in order to do a reimbursement request. You can do it at the time that you want to actually submit that reimbursement request. And you can do, for each time an invoice comes in, or you have an expense and you have the supporting documentation for it, you can immediately submit a reimbursement request based on that. You don't have to wait until you have 10 expenses and then submit them. You can do them one at a time, or you can wait till you have 10 and submit one single reimbursement request based on 10 different invoices. It's flexible as to what you need, what you should do. So there's a question that says, so if I have uploaded all the detail under documents, I could just record one expense for the whole amount. This is a process question for VDEM. Ideally, you should create an expense per invoice. So if you have one invoice or one expense document, whatever it is, it's for $10,000, you can create just one expense, say it's for $10,000, and upload that expense to the supporting document to that expense and submit that reimbursement request. But let's say, for instance, you have 4 different invoices from 4 different vendors, or even if it's the same vendor, it doesn't matter, but if it's 4 different invoices, ideally you should create an expense for each of the 4 different invoices. So in that case, you would go to reimbursement request and you would create 4 different expenses and upload the supporting document for each of those individual 4 expenses. So instead of saying, if you have 4 invoices totaling $100,000, you're not going to create one expense for $100,000 and upload 4 documents to a single expense. You'll create expense number 1 for $20,000, expense number 2 for $30,000, expense number 3 for $10,000, expense number 4 for the balance, and attach the supporting documentation for each. That's the process that we recommend. And when I say we, I say MV3, but I know VDEM is on the call, so if if George or someone wants to interrupt and suggest a different way, then they can do so.
Yeah, that's the same for us. I mean, that's the recommendation, is the way that you explained it, Chris.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so one subgrantee is saying that for one of their past claims, they have over 2,000 individual expenses. And so that seems a bit excessive to go and create 2,000 different expenses, and I would agree that is indeed the case. Keep in mind, going forward, you can lock these expenses as they incur going forward. So it's not like you're going to sit there and have to create 2,000 expenses at once. It should happen throughout the life of the project as you incur these expenses, which will make it really easy at the end of it all to submit them all in a reimbursement request. However, if you have a unique situation like this, where you have 2,000 individual expenses on a specific project that you need to submit for reimbursement, at that point, I recommend that you discuss that with VDEM and see if there's an exception to the rule where you can just submit a single reimbursement request and have all the documents attached to that. That's a unique scenario where it might be a unique way.
Chris, this is Matt at VDEM. In that type of specific case, what we would recommend is that you actually split out the invoices based upon the budget line items and group them and submit them in that type fashion. So if you have 2,000 invoices and 5 line items, you would split up the 2,000 invoices in accordance to the budget line items and submit them for reimbursements based that way. Does that make sense? Did that answer the question?
So Matt, in that
yes.
case, they would have, if they have 5 line items, they would have 5 expenses, and
correct.
They would split the supporting documentation between those 5 expenses. Okay.
Correct, and that allows for an easy tracking mechanism, as well as allows us the opportunity to be able to say, is there any kind of a budget adjustment that needs to be made? $1 from $1 from line item 1 goes to line item 3, to be able to make things work in accordance with the overall budget in its own right, and also provides a mechanism for the for the project manager to be able to say, okay, this takes the burden of submitting 2,000, but simply puts them into the 5 categories that would be inappropriate with the board with the budget. So that would be the compromise in that type situation.